I think it's a cliche, but it's important to study history so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And it's also very fascinating to figure out what are the roots of the things that we do now? Where are the habits and the customs that we have with us? Where did they come from? And to get a sense of where they came from, who made them, what we are in some sense reenacting without knowing it, can really be a very interesting process.
Welcome to Thoughts, Camera, Action. So today we're looking at the story of King Movember of the Congo. You might know him as King Alfonso I, but that was his Christianized name when he converted to the religion of Catholicism. Spearheaded by the Portuguese settlers. Now, King Movember was very zealous, and very passionate, and very, I would say, misguided by the concept of Catholicism, to the extent where he endeavored to convert most of his people to Catholicism. Raising monuments and so on and so forth. Now, eventually, King Movember became disillusioned to the foreign occupation or invasion of the Portuguese, and as a result he started to write letters containing grievances of the treatment of his people. Now, in Africa, when there was a rival tribe, they would, sell on prisoners of war among each other for service. This was exploited at the hands of the Portuguese. They started off selling prisoners of war, and then the Portuguese then started kidnapping and stealing any and anybody just to fill their own pockets economically. So naturally, he became disillusioned, but he became disillusioned perhaps a little bit too late. This story will look at King Movember of Congo. And as always,
it all began with a medieval European adventurer called Diego Cao, landing at the mouth of the river Zaire in 1482.
Donc, lorsque l'équipage du Portugais Diego Cao arrive à Cos, donc dans les...
When the Portuguese adventurer Diego Cao arrived at the mouth of the Zaire River in 1482 with his crew, he came up against an organized political system with a common language. They asked for a meeting with the local ruler from the people they met. These were the Soyo, and they told Diego Cao that the big ruler lived 500 kilometers in the interior, in his capital Mbanza, Congo, which is today in the Zaire province of Angola.
Portuguese missionaries in the 16th century, King John II of Portugal sent Jesuit missionaries to the Kingdom of Congo. The King of Congo converted to Christianity himself.
Most of what we know of him comes to us through his correspondence with the Portuguese. Movember converted to Christianity, patronized religious art, built up his capital, and expanded the wealth of Congo.
So this is from AfricanHeritage.com. Before slavery, African kings, Alfonso I, king of the Congo. November Nzinga circa 1461-1543, also known as Alfonso, ruled as Mani Congo king of Congo from 1506 to 1543. He came to power soon after arrival of the first Europeans in 1482. Take a note of that, 1482, that was 10 years before they discovered the Americas. Cao was the first European to visit the Zaire area, hoping to benefit from the power and wealth of the Portuguese. Nzinga Nakubu converted to Christianity and was baptized with the name of the reigning Portuguese king Joao. At the same time, in July 1491, Nzinga Nakubu's son, Movember Nzinga, was baptized as Alfonso, the name of the Portuguese prince who was heir to the throne. Now I want to talk about this. Why is it, if you want to convert to Christianity, you have to take a name of a European or some of a foreigner? Why can't you be a Christian, or a Muslim for that matter, and just keep your own name? Well, actually, I understand Islam because the names are supposed to have meaning. That's why you take an Islamic name. But let's talk about Christianity anyway. And this is the beginning of the black inferiority complex. Abandoning names, the beginning of your own identity in favor of foreign ones. Now, I want to stop right there. I know a lot of you watched Black Panther. Now, do you see this bit? Portuguese agents? A lot of people didn't notice this, but in that film, people told me about it. They kept telling me that he had a CIA agent and these foreign people that he was talking to. Again, foreigners in the court of Africans are always dangerous. Always. I don't care what country they're from. They're always dangerous. And right from the beginning, do you see how that film is programming your mind to accept non-black people into the circles of power to advise them on what to do? And here's the proof. 1492 all the way to 2018, nothing's changed. At least the mindset doesn't change. Anyway, let's move on. He also had traditional objects of art considered by the Portuguese to be diabolical burned. Again, trying to destroy the civilization. Renounce everything that makes you, you, and accept everything that makes them, them. So in turn you hate yourself and you love them. So in turn you hate yourself and you love them.
What does that God look like? The reality of it is when he came here, he didn't look like me. So what am I going to do about that? I'm going to make him look like me. So for hundreds of years we've been telling you, and now you have to keep in mind that we took away any other god that you might have through force, through fear, through pain, through any means necessary. So now I'm going to give you a God, but I'm going to do that in a way that it's going to further me. So I'm going to give you a God that looks like me, so that when you bow down to that God, you're bowing down to me. Because the reality is, the Bible tells us what Jesus looked like when he walked here. The Bible tells us what he's going to look like when he comes back. We have taken that and changed it. Do you remember when Jesus went to Egypt? He hid in Egypt. The people in Egypt, honey, they're not white people. How could he hide that? See, so that we've done that. We've given your people a God that looks like me, so that you don't have any qualm about bowing down to me. See, because this is the image of God. I don't know of any sin that we've committed that's greater than that.
I'd now like to call on Yonazyanga to chair the next session, which is titled Blacks as Jews / Black Jews, whatever that's meant to.
First of all, I would like to give thanks to Ephraim Sicher for organizing this. It's a pleasure to be here again. And I think the topic is indeed very important, as Gabriel Motzking mentioned earlier. In a few years' time, there will be more and more people from other places that say they're Jews as well. And what we are discussing here today is really very important.
Peter,
wait a minute. Let's run this back. So you're telling me that many in Israel know this fact, and yet you would tell them, brother, who are you? You know you're not the real children of the Bible. And they will simply say, I know that I'm not, but I don't care. But because I have all of these perks and I have all of these benefits, that I would rather keep the benefits and keep the lie hidden. Are you telling me that, Peter?
I'm telling you that a lot of people do know. And they say, we all mix. They use excuses. They say, we all mix. You can tell, do you think in Greek, ancient Greeks live in Greece? Do you think you can find Babylonians in Iraq right now? Do you think you can find Persians in Iran right now? No, they're all mixed with the Arabs. And so
let me ask you
in
this.
America today.
So what do you believe? Do you believe that this is the government of America and Israel working together to make sure that this truth is not brought out, because it's so much money being made and it's so much, the government of Israel is getting so many benefits from the military funds, as well as over in America, there's so many pastors that are pushing and teaching, hey, we got to protect Israel over there. We got to protect them people over there. And you African Americans, you're not the children of Israel, and you're Gentiles. And so you believe that you know that this is a cover up by both governments.
Well, I don't want to make it political, but it is a cover up. And I can tell you that ever since I came to Israel, I was not born in Israel. I came to Israel. I started to realize that a lot of things have been covered up, and I was looking the reason why, and this is how I found the reason why. This is exactly the reason why it is covered up. It is covered up, and I can tell you that Israel. I was told when I came to Israel, I was told that Israel is a free country, and we the Jews who have built it, so we can benefit from it and not live among others people, so we can depend on them, and every single time they don't like us, they can kick us away, and so on. When I came to Israel, I found out that this was not true. Israel is not really a free country, because it depends on so many organizations and forces which are not even Israeli organizations. They come from out. They come from America, like the Jewish Agency, the organization which decides who to live in Israel or who not, like all the religious organizations, like the organization which bring money for Israel to build universities, synagogues, and everything. And it's obvious that a lot of things have been hidden from us. And this is one of the things which has been hidden for us. It really, I don't want to make it political, but it is a very political.
By 1576, Portuguese traders and missionaries had spread throughout the kingdom. Portuguese influence moved up the Congo River south to present-day what's called Luanda, Angola, reaching as far as modern-day Namibia.
The Kingdom of Congo was a highly developed state and had extensive trade networks. They manufactured many products and were particularly famous for manufacturing cloth. They styled themselves with a loincloth made from various fabrics like silk, linen, cotton, and even velvet. Portuguese travelers described the city Banza Congo as a very large city, and in the 15th century, they converted to Christianity. The first Congolese ruler to convert to Christianity was Zinga Nkuwu. He allowed many Catholic priests into the region. However, Christianity largely remained amongst only the elite in Congo society. Now, while King Kuwu eventually abandoned his Christianity for his African traditional beliefs, his son Vemba Azinga adopted Christianity on a statewide scale, and he seemed pretty serious about it. His son Vemba Azinga adopted Christianity on a serious level. making it the official religion of the Congo. And he even created a Congolese coat of arms that was used by other Congolese leaders on all official documents. King Vemba, or Alfonso, came to power at the height of political power in the Congo. Now Vemba seemed genuinely converted to Christianity, as he not only built churches, but he also built religious-oriented schools in his region. During his reign, Congolese words were used to advance Christian concepts, and the Bible was actually renamed Kanda Ukisi in order to adhere to the Congolese language.
We hear the voice of the Mani Congo, the king of the Congo himself, speaking directly to us across the centuries in a unique set of letters between him and the King of Portugal. Writing here on October the 5th, 1514, from his palace in Mbanza, Congo.
Very high and powerful prince, we Dom Afonso, by the grace of God, King of the Congo and Lord of the Ambundu, recommend ourselves to your highness as a king which we love very much. We want you to know that we are already Christians.
Once the opening formalities were over, King Afonso set about unburdening himself, particularly his irritation with a Portuguese merchant called Fernão de Melo.
He sold our goods at the lowest price possible. With the money, he bought a slave from Gore and another. He sent us them in one of the first ships, saying they were the carpenters. At the same time, he sent us some blue cloth, all gnawed by rats.
The Portuguese, for their part, were amazed at the extreme piety exhibited by the young King Afonso when he had come to Portugal the previous year. So impressed was a Franciscan missionary, Rui da Guia, that he felt obliged to write to the Pope.
It seems to me from the way he speaks that he's not a man, but rather an angel, sent by the Lord into this kingdom to convert it. For I assure you, it is he who instructs us. He devotes himself entirely to study, so it often happens he falls asleep over his books, and often he forgets to eat and drink in talking of the sins of our Lord.
King Vemba even sent his son to Europe to be educated. His son eventually became ordained as a priest and eventually became the first black bishop ever. Now, to give you guys some perspective on what was going on in other parts of Africa. During this time, Africa was flourishing under Askia the Great and the Songhai Empire. So we had African Muslims in Western Africa and African Christians in Southern Africa. So yeah, there's an extensive history of Islam and Christianity within Africa, just like most parts of the world. Now, from the beginning, the Kingdom of Congo and the Portuguese relationship was actually pretty healthy, but over time it began to deteriorate due to Portuguese interest. The Congo actually became a very good source of slave labor. During the expansion of the Congo Empire, the Congolese would actually frequently sell war captives to the Portuguese due to the demand of slave labor. However, this process quickly began to go out of control. King Vemba quickly suspected the Portuguese were actually gaining slaves illegally, meaning these people were pretty much common citizens.
The Portuguese wanted to make more money, so they were getting involved with the slave business, and then they wanted more slaves than was available. So they began supplying guns to different villagers to start civil wars. At this time, King Alfonso I wrote to King John asking him to stop the slave trade, because some kings realized this is getting bad. This is pretty bad here.
Upon this reality, King Vemba writes a letter to the King of Portugal saying, and I quote, "Each day the traders are kidnapping our people, children of this country, sons of our nobles and vassals, even people of our own family. This corruption and depravity are so widespread that our land is entirely depopulated. We need in this kingdom only priests and school teachers and no merchandise, unless it is wine and flour for mass. It is our wish that this kingdom not be a place for the trade or transport of slaves."
There is in our kingdom a great obstacle to God. Many of our subjects crave the Portuguese merchandise which your people bring to our kingdom so keenly. In order to satisfy their crazy appetite, they snatch our free subjects. They even take our noblemen and sons of noblemen, even our kinsmen. They sell them to white men who are in our kingdom, after having transported their prisoners on the sly in the dead of night. Then they are branded. The white men allege that they have bought them, but they cannot say from whom.
You were talking about earlier that there are certain African leaders at the time that we should pay more attention to and talk about. Who were some of the African leaders who stood out at the time as people who were saying basically, no, this can't happen?
I mean, I suppose 2 or 3 figures come to mind, and if we deal with them in terms of the earliest kind of periods, King Afonso of the Congo, I mean, we shouldn't use that name because that's the name given to him by the Portuguese that he might have adopted. Yes. His name wasn't King Afonso, but anyway, let's use that. That's what he's known as to history as. But he came to the throne in the Congo, around early 16th century. But he wrote, and he was literate, he wrote a number of letters which still exist, protesting at the slave trade.
Afonso I.
And we're going to see this letter to the King of Portugal. And here's the King of Portugal. He was the king from 1521 to 1557. And Alfonso I is going to have some complaints that he's going to write to the King of Portugal about how his people have been treated by the Portuguese who have been coming into his land as guests. Your Highness of Portugal should know how the kingdom is being lost in so many ways that it is convenient to provide for the necessary remedy, since this is caused by the excessive freedom given by your factors and officials to the men and merchants who are allowed to come to this kingdom and set up shops with goods and many things which have been prohibited by us, and which they spread throughout our kingdom and domains in such an abundance that many of our vassals, whom we had in obedience, do not comply, because they have these things in greater abundance than we ourselves. And it was with these things that we had them content and subjected under our vassalage and jurisdiction. So it is doing a great harm not only to the service of God, but to the security and the peace of our kingdom and state as well. In other words, what King Alfonso I is saying to the King of Portugal is, you sent all these whites into our country. There's merchants and there's priests, and that's good, but a problem has occurred. In fact, what he's saying is that you flooded the market here in our country with so many European products that my princes, my vassals, the people that work under my authority, they are able to get those products directly from Portugal very easily. And that's a problem because my people, my vassals, my princes used to look to me as a source of income, look to me as a source of these rare European goods. But now your guys are coming in our country and they have direct access to European products. And if they have direct access to European products, they're not looking to me as a sign of authority anymore. Now this is a big problem, because as the Portuguese and the leaders are entering in, you can see that there's these different goods that these Africans on the very bottom are carrying. And you can see even here's this white priest kind of like being carried around, as he travels throughout Angola. And you can see even here's this white priest kind of like being carried around, as he travels throughout Angola. And you can see even here's this white priest kind of like being carried around, as he travels throughout Angola. And you can see even here's this white priest kind of like being carried around, as he travels throughout Angola. Also known as modern-day Congo. Also known as modern-day Congo.
To know that when your technicians and teachers come to our country, you will find in the Congolese people friends and brothers.
African leaders were new to us. A man such as Lumumba did not have the sophistication or the polish, if you will, of the normal German or French or Belgian, English, what have you, diplomat. He tended to say things very bluntly, and which upset, I think, the Western nations.
La reine Elisabeth de Belgique est présidente des amitiés belgo-russes. Est-elle communiste? Lorsqu'il parle contre Lumumba, sachez que Lumumba n'est qu'un bouc émissaire et la bête noire. Ce n'est pas Lumumba qu'il vise, mais plutôt vous et l'avenir du Congo. Cher frère, je fais appel à votre sagesse, à la sagesse bantoue. La situation est plus grave que vous ne l'imaginez. Unissons-nous, car vous êtes capables de sauver ce pays. Oublions tout ce qui nous a divisés jusqu'ici.
Vers le mois de juillet, août, nous pourrons commencer déjà à avoir des essais cliniques, n'est-ce pas, de ce vaccin.
Ici à la Russie.
Bon, nous avons été choisis aussi pour faire ces essais. Donc le vaccin sera produit soit au Canada, soit aux États-Unis, soit en Chine. Nous sommes candidats pour faire les essais ici chez nous.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, le Président va vous recevoir.
Monsieur Timberlake, content de vous voir. J'ai essayé vainement de vous joindre à l'ambassade.
Je bouge beaucoup, Excellence.
Tout le monde bouge beaucoup depuis un moment.
Mon gouvernement aurait des propositions à vous faire.
Propositions? Je vous entendrai volontiers, mais permettez-moi de douter de la fiabilité des propositions américaines. Vous connaissez certainement ce proverbe bantou. La main qui donne, la main qui dirige. Votre main, je la sens beaucoup trop lourde depuis un moment. Veuillez m'excuser.
Most potent weapon of control for the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. They know slavery is not a condition. Slavery is a cult. Human trafficking is a cult. Slavery got a rebrand like the alt-right and snatched. Another one gone. Every 30 seconds, another chocolate brown, caramel yellow, high yellow, red bone refugee girl with melanin in her skin gets snatched. Every 30 seconds. And to make matters worse, these dazzling new plantation owners built a pipeline to take our children from school to prison quicker than a cut can bleed.
Luta política, luta militar, guerra psicológica. Guerra psicológica. De modo que, quando os meus irmãos aqui pedem, que se venderam a consciência, ficaram sem personalidade.
Missão suíça, portanto, que me tinha custeado os estudos até a altura, que me tinha custeado os estudos até a conclusão, portanto, do segundo ano do ciclo preparatório, não é? Convoca-me para eu deixar de estudar e continuar, portanto, ir ser afetado numa missão para dar aulas ou a tarefa que a igreja me iria confiar.
É a igreja essa já?
É a igreja, portanto, que tinha...
Nós dissemos em 1973, setembro, ai de vocês, moçambicanos, ao serviço do colonialismo. Não terão lugar quando chegar à altura. Assim o fizeram os franceses na Indochina. Vocês não terão lugar nos barcos. E é verdade, deixaram-vos ali. Não se lembraram de vocês. Tiraram os PIDs portugueses para serem julgados em Portugal. E vocês foram abandonados aqui.
É verdade.
Estás a ver? O papá foi. Mas por que tu ficaste da PID?
Sr. Presidente, várias razões por que fiquei da PID. Primeiro, ambição pessoal. Segundo, dificuldades materiais que eu sentia, portanto, para concretizar essa minha ambição pessoal. Esta foi uma das segundas razões. Terceira razão, porque embora tivesse habilitações literárias, posso, se me permitir, dizer que nós éramos analfabetos políticos, não sabíamos o que era a independência, não tínhamos nenhum sentido da independência. Segundo, outro ponto, havia alienação. O colonialismo tinha instrumentos que possibilitavam, portanto, a alienação das pessoas. Lembro-me perfeitamente que, por volta de 1960 ou 61, eles tinham um programa que chamava... que era radiofundido às 12 horas, que diziam Moscovo não fala a verdade.
A verdade é só uma. O rádio Moscovo não fala a verdade.
And the lucky ones go from school to the NFL, where they don't even let them niggas take a knee. They've been programmed from birth with food options, contaminated drinking water, gun violence, police brutality, and trauma after trauma after trauma. PTSD, no therapy. Missing, no Amber Alert. Alone. Vulnerable. Snatched. Another one gone.
Yes, it is true. We now know that Jews were very importantly involved in the slave trade in medieval times, both, as Professor Clark has said, in the East, in the Arabic areas, and also in Europe. That is even before our African slave trade to the Americas.
This man is about to die. In a few moments, he'll be led to a public square bound to a stake and burned to death as a heretic. The year is 1755. The place, Lisbon, Portugal. Thousands bear witness. They've been told this man is Satan's servant.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, je dois vous dire ma préoccupation. L'armée nationale congolaise...
Je sais, Monsieur le Président. Tient passivement les Belges. Le Ghana ne nous appuie qu'en parole et la Guinée n'a pas de moyens.
Vous avez une solution?
Les Russes? Promettre des Ilouchines, le cadre militaire. Il pourrait renforcer les troupes du général Lundula, qui remplacera le colonel Mobutu, à qui je n'ai plus confiance.
Je croyais que les Russes vous faisaient peur et qu'ils risquaient de vous compromettre.
C'était il y a un siècle, Monsieur le Président. Nous sommes compromis jusqu'au cou. Yes, it is true, as we now know. The Jews were heavily invested in the Dutch West India Company. The Dutch West India Company, that company which was a private corporation doing the job of colonizing, which was responsible in large measure for the African slave trade. The Dutch West India Company that owned the Elmina Fort in what is now Ghana.
Quel bel endroit, n'est-ce pas? Et quelle paix.
Permettez-moi d'insister, Monsieur le Président. Ai-je votre accord pour faire appel aux Russes? Si vous avez une meilleure solution, je peux peut-être l'entendre et l'appliquer.
Je n'en vois pas.
The Dutch West India Company that brought slaves from Africa to the Caribbean, to South America. The same Dutch West India Company that brought the first slaves to New York when it was still New Amsterdam.
So great, sir, is the corruption and licentiousness that our country is being completely depopulated. So great, sir, is the corruption and licentiousness that our country is being completely depopulated.
Because they have great mineral resources there.
That sounds diabolical.
It is, yes.
That sounds like something conceived in the mind of Margaret Sanger.
Yeah, definitely. And so at the time, Kissinger and those involved with the Carter administration wanted to shrink the population, make sure that the Africans do not develop and do not use the resources for themselves, because we in the States, we need them. There is a concerted effort of foreign powers to control the population of Africa. Africa is a huge continent, could feed thousands more people, but the policies of the West, especially in Europe. For example, between 1990 and the year 2000, the United States, Canada, and Europe contributed about $6 billion in contraceptives, not to help the people, not to clean water, clean food. That is
not to fight malaria, for example.
No, of course, perish the thought. Never let them die. That's the whole idea. So, in our work in HLI, we denounced this reality to make the Africans aware that they have to defend themselves against the influence of foreign powers.
Is it just the United States, or do you believe that China is also playing a role in jockeying for the resources of Africa?
China is playing a major role because China is buying property in Africa. For example, in Mozambique, which is a Portuguese-speaking language country, they when Portugal was in charge of Mozambique, they used to export rice. Now they are importing rice from China because they cannot produce. The socialism has wrecked the production of rice. And the Chinese come and buy farms. So about almost a third of Mozambique belongs to China. So I was in other countries of Africa, the same reality. In South Africa, the Chinese are buying property, buying land in Africa.
So
and they send their own workers, the Chinese workers. They don't employ people of the place. They send their own workers to populate and to live in the place.
Did you like or hate what you heard? Let us know in the comments below.
It is our will that in these kingdoms there should not be any trade of slaves nor outlet for them.
Instead, in 1540, instead of listening to request of King Alfonso I, King John sent more guns, and that eventually leads to the collapse of the Kingdom of Congo.
Neighboring kingdoms, which had once formed as network of alliances, began to form their own unilateral treaties with the Portuguese, and the exodus of men and women across the Atlantic to service the slave plantations of the Americas proceeded relentlessly, reducing the equatorial basin in parts to a wasteland. The year is 1526. The charmed relationship between the Bakongo and the Portuguese is drowning in a tide of greed and cruelty, and the trade in slaves, which had originally given the Money Congo the purchasing power to buy foreign goods, is now increasingly out of his control, and worse, robbing the kingdom of its best men. The Money Congo, King Alfonso I, is unhappy.
The other person who comes to mind within the same kind of region is, of course, Queen Nzinga. She, in fact, of course, comes to power in Ndongo. And in some ways, we need to locate her in the kind of destabilization of the Congo, because Queen Nzinga's kingdom was initially a tributary kingdom to the Congo. That the Portuguese encouraged her to break away. She comes to power in the destabilization that takes place in the 1620s, roughly 1624, and for 30 years or so, she leads a campaign against the slave trade. And it's really only with her death that the situation is in fact created whereby the Portuguese can in fact now, as it were, install their own puppet leaders in some of these places. So Queen Nzinga, I think, is a significant kind of figure. She's a powerful figure. She too, again, was literate. A number of her letters survive. And I would, of course, encourage listeners to really get into this kind of literature. Okay, it's up to us to make that available.
Yes.
Now, those written by King Alfonso, by Queen Nzinga, and of course,
Queen Nzinga, her father prepared her to be the woman and the leader that she was. She was stronger than her brother who preceded her. Now, she was a very, very skilled diplomat. What's interesting about her, for example, you have this one group called the Jaga, J-A-G-A, marauders. They are mercenaries, essentially, all right? But she was able to form an alliance with the Jaga to challenge those Africans who fought on the side of the Portuguese, and also to challenge the Portuguese. Now, she went to them in 1622 and said, hey, let's make a peace treaty. I'll give you back your captives. You leave Ndongo. You leave Matamba. They said, yeah, okay. And then this is true now. They said yes. They said, okay, this is what we're going to do. She turned her back. They attacked. This is 1622. And some 30-something years later, because of all of her effort, they ended up signing that very same peace treaty. All right, this is from 30 years, well, I guess 44 years before. Right? And during this time, especially throughout the whole of the 1940s, Queen Nzinga led her troops in battle. She didn't sit back comfortably somewhere and await reports. She led them into battle over again. When they were in situations where they knew they weren't going to prevail, she came up with ways to enable them to escape. And the victories that they won, where they prevailed, she led them in battles. When they needed to form new alliances, she's the one who went out and got the new alliances. She's the one who formed the alliances with the Dutch to acquire weaponry to challenge the Portuguese.
Finally, in 1665, the army of the Congo sustained a decisive defeat at the hands of the Portuguese, and Congo became just one of a number of small states dependent on the Portuguese, whose ruling class quaintly maintained the titles of the Portuguese aristocracy. The arrival of the Portuguese signaled the end of one of the biggest equatorial states in Africa. It signaled a grave disruption to African control of trade routes leading outside the continent, and the political life of the continent reflected this.
I think the problem started when the relationship between Portugal and Congo started to be looked at largely in terms of the slave trade, and it degenerated into a relationship of unequals. Portugal was even questioning the right of Congo to send ambassador now, and increasingly looking at Congo as really a colony and not a sovereign state.
This next story is going to look at a young lady by the name of Kimpa Vita, who was also from the Congo, the same place as King Movember, also known as King Alfonso I. And it was around this time period that this young lady rose from the ashes of the confusion that was taking place in the Congo to become a bold, outspoken young woman. And she didn't really go with the general rhetoric that was being advocated by the Catholic Church, meaning she was very much an outspoken antagonist of the Catholic Church, to the extremes where she allegedly said that the Messiah was not a Caucasian in appearance, but similar to the people of his day. As you might imagine, these words, even when spoken today, cause a feeling of uneasiness and uncomfortableness even among black and white and in-between believers. This lady was very courageous and bold when it came to speaking out against the foreign oppression of her people. Kimpa Vita was 22 years old, and for these outspoken, frank, unpolitically correct opinions, she was caught and burnt alive. You could say she was an African version of Joan of Arc, a female who stood up against the powers that be unapologetically and courageously. This story will seek to just give you an overstanding and an insight into the life of Kimpa Vita, and as always, provoking thought.
On the 2nd of July 1706, in Mbamza, Congo, the city of the Congo Kingdom, a 22-year-old young woman was burned alive for the revolution against slavery. Her name is Kimpa Vita, the mother of the African Revolution.
C'est comme ça que je la vois, une jeune femme audacieuse, courageuse, qui s'est sacrifiée pour ses idées, pour son peuple, et qui était une espèce de porte-flambeau de la liberté des peuples africains.
C'est très moderne en fait, l'image de Kimpa Vita est très moderne, parce qu'encore une fois, je dirais que chaque génération, il y aura toujours des personnes qui vont dénoncer les injustices, il y aura toujours des personnes qui vont se dire tiens, un autre monde est possible. Kimpavika, je pense qu'elle a compris qu'en fait, il fallait ne plus accepter la condition des Noirs dans son pays et donc de se révolter quelque part. Et ce qui était très important aussi pour moi, c'est montrer aussi qu'en règle générale, souvent, le changement de société provient aussi des jeunes. Parce que quand elle a pris conscience qu'elle pouvait justement mettre en question la société dans laquelle elle était assez jeune. Et donc elle a créé ce mouvement derrière elle pour dire voilà, soyez fiers de ce que vous êtes, soyez fiers de la couleur que vous avez.
So she was one of the priests or priestesses that helped the people solve their problems. And so she began to preach, again, that they were the people of the book, that Yeshua was black, that Mary was black. Imagine this African Congolese woman in the 1700s preaching this message around the countryside, centering her people, our people, in the scriptural story. Again, this is not new, but many times when brothers and sisters from Africa and even people like Prophet William Crowdy from America in the 1800s would say that we were the biblical Hebrews, it would be ignored. Unfortunately for this sister, she was killed, and when she was killed, they ground her bones to a powder. That is how dangerous the message of who the true Hebrews are is. They grounded her bones to a powder to try to get rid of her. But over the past few years, people have been uncovering her because she was indeed a prophetess. She was saying what many of us are saying now, hundreds of years ago.
The 15th century was a time when the legacy of powerful African kingdoms were wickedly invaded by the West. The African people's rich and plentiful history was interrupted by slavery, genocide, and the deportation of Africans to new lands. The Great Kingdom of Congo was no exception. A century later, in 1704, a fearless young woman decided to fight for her country. And while she tragically met her demise and was burned alive on the 2nd of July 1706, she will always be remembered throughout her kingdom as Kimpavita, the mother of the African Revolution.
Elle a résisté et elle a posé des questions de conscience, nous permettant d'oublier la trahison.
And when you look at many of the Bantu languages spoken in the Congo, you see many Hebrew words. So some may try to call her Catholic, some may try to say, oh, she was just a crazy woman. But actually, now the proof is coming out that many of the people in the Congo are actually Hebrews. And this was a sister doing this work when many of our people were being taught a false gospel. She was trying to teach her people the true good news of the word of Yah. Because some say identity doesn't matter, but if identity didn't matter, then why were the colors of the people changed? And so I just want to say her name, Kimpavita. And I want us to say her name, to remember her, to read about her, Google her, teach your kids, especially your young girls, about her. Right now, there are so many Congolese immigrants in America. My old roommate, Barbara, used to work with them as a sister from Tanzania. And we hear about all types of refugees. We hear about refugees from the Middle East. And we should welcome all the strangers and the refugees among us as believers. But how come no one ever talks to you about the Congolese refugees that are being dumped in hoods all around America to fend for themselves? And they've been raped, they've been traumatized. The Congo has been under attack. Even with King Leopold, what many people don't know is, yes, there were small numbers of Congo people taken into slavery. But what many people don't know is that actually there were basically rubber plantations in the Congo. So there were some of our Hebrew family that were enslaved, living in the same conditions we did here, but maybe being able to keep their language and keep their customs, but they were on their own land. And that's a whole nother level of trauma. Yes, it's traumatizing to be taken from your land, but imagine someone sets up a plantation on your land and they make you work it. And if you didn't turn in that rubber for King Leopold, you were getting limbs cut off. So sometimes we think Deuteronomy 28 only happened in America or the Caribbean and Latin America. No, it happened right in Africa as well. She was a woman of faith, of truth, and of theology. This is a quote from her that I think sums up true having a sincere faith in Yah, because it's really not just about keeping the commandments, getting immersed, wearing the fringes, but you're not really connected to Yah. This is a quote from Kimpa. Yah wants intention. It is the intention that Yah grasps. Immersion serves nothing. It is the intent that Yah takes. Confession serves nothing. It is the intention that Yah wants. Good works serve no purpose. Intention is what Yah wants. And this quote basically means you can do all the right things, but if your heart is not right, Yah is not going to accept it. So even in teaching about Hebrew identity and the awakening, if our intention is hate and bitterness and just to be prideful, Yah's really not going to take it. When she was going around the countryside preaching for her people as someone that her people ordained to deal with their collective issues, she was not doing this because she was so fixated on the Portuguese Catholics and she hated them. She was doing this out of a love for her people. And so even as we share this information, what is your intention? Your intention should be more focused on your people than on hating someone else, because our enemies will be dealt with. And even how they killed her and grinded up her bones will be dealt with. Yah is not slack in taking care of his children.
Say, Africa must wake up, the sleeping sons of Jacob, for what tomorrow may bring. May a better day come. Yesterday we were kings. Can you tell me, young ones, who are we today?
Get up in the morning, slaving for bread, sir, so that every mouth can be fed.
Eurocentric worship is what we authorize. Christ was white, not black. What you heard was lies. Khazars, Sephardis are the Israelites. No more talk on this topic cause it divides. I'll see you next Sabbath. Please don't forget your tithes. Forget tithes, tell the truth.
Now that the curse is lifted, we can finally see the light. We praise the Most High, we can finally get it right. We keep the Holy Sabbath, we breaking no commandment. We standing on the corner, letting these other nations have it. I know the truth hurt, but see the truth word, fulfilling prophecy, yeah, to the Jew first. Everybody ain't gon' get it, so that truth heard. Breaking down all lies and religion first. See, I thirst prophecy, and yo, I fit the curse. Look at the news, is real, man, it's getting worse. Jacob trouble is real, head hard as steel. Broad is the way that leads you off there.
for watching Thoughts Camera Action. Before you go anywhere, don't forget to click subscribe.